Ja, Achim, zum Thema
When discussing orchestral libraries, we have to discuss the topic of formats, as there are a variety of different formats. So hopefully, in this chapter, we will throw some light on the topic of what is available on the market. The ideal case is that you buy a library, and when you install it, a player is installed alongside the library, so you can start work straight away. This is, for example, the case with the VSL library. A player is included in audio unit and VST format, and can therefore be used from within virtually all software packages, such as Logic, Cubase, and Studio One, etc. There is also the Play engine from East West, and although we don't use this too often, it is a well-known engine. And then we come to perhaps the most complicated of the options, which is Kontakt from Native Instruments. Kontakt is a sample player, and one could say that it has become the industry standard sample player for libraries. Kontakt in itself doesn't do anything. It is simply a player for libraries that you install. However, there is a small issue worth mentioning in relation to Kontakt and libraries, and we will discuss this now. As an example, we are going to go to the website of Sonokinetic Capriccio, which is a library we have used extensively in this tutorial, and we can see how we can install this within Kontakt. So here we are on the Sonokinetic website, on the page related to Capriccio, and we can see the section explaining the format here. And we can see in the format section that it says that this library is for Native Instruments Kontakt and Kontakt Player. This is important because the Kontakt Player is free to download from Native Instruments website, whereas Kontakt, the full version, needs to be purchased. It is also included in Native Instruments Complete. What this means is, if I buy this library, I can use it without any extra expenses. However, whilst the same is true of the Cine Samples Lite library, which we will also be using, if I go to the product page for the Drums of War library, it says here that it requires the full version of Kontakt. So to use this library, I would need to have the full version of Kontakt. One thing to note is that it says Kontakt 2, and this is simply because the Drums of War library is an older library, and Kontakt 2 would have been the required player when it was first released. It could just as well say Kontakt Complete 5, but the fact remains that you need a full version of Kontakt. So the important thing is to check that any library is compatible with your version of Kontakt, be it the free player version or the full version. Obviously, if you own the full version, then all libraries will work on your system. Quite often, the libraries that come with Kontakt Player are a touch more expensive because a license for the player has to be paid to Native Instruments. So now we can see how installation works. I have purchased the Sonokinetic Capriccio library online, and I have already downloaded it, as it was over 50 gigabytes of data. Usually, after having downloaded a library, you will have to de-archive it. If it doesn't come on a USB stick or even a hard drive, it will be in either the zip format or RAR format. So you will need to have the appropriate software installed on your system to unzip or de-archive the downloaded library. On OS X, for example, you can use unrar. And on Windows, one option would be 7-zip. The next step would be to go to the Native Instruments website. And if we look under the Free Products section, we can see that there is the Kontakt 5 player free. Of course, your library may include the Kontakt player anyway, in which case you don't need to download it here. Having said that, by downloading it from the Native Instruments website, you will be certain you have the latest version. And so, by clicking here, we come to the download page. And the only thing I have to do is insert my email address and the country I am in, and via email, I will receive a link for both the Macintosh and PC versions. As I have downloaded the installer earlier, we can jump to the installer and double-click to install it. It installs like most other applications. So by clicking Continue, you get to this page, where we can choose what format will be installed. On my system, I work exclusively with VST plugins, so I will deactivate the audio unit and AAX plugin options. If you are working within Logic or others, for example, you might need the audio unit plugin. And if you were installing on a PC, the audio unit option would not be available, as it is a Macintosh-only format. So now we choose to install, and I need to put my computer password in. It's not such a large application, and so shouldn't take too long. And so now we can see that the installation has been successful. The plugin has been installed, and if we go into our Applications folder, there will be a Native Instruments folder, and from there we can also open a standalone version of the application. You might wish to use this when setting up your library, without having to open Cubase or Logic, for example. Now though, we'll open it from within my sequencer. Having already downloaded it, a folder has been created called Capriccio, and in theory everything is contained within this folder. It seems that the library contains 16 and 24-bit versions, and here, in the Capriccio subfolder, we have the documentation, the instruments, and the samples. It might be worthwhile at this moment to check that everything has been installed correctly, and to do this you can simply look through the folders to see if all the samples and programs are actually there. In theory they should be, but to avoid any problems later, it may be worth taking a quick look. On my work computer, I have a folder that contains all of my sample libraries, and I have already copied the Capriccio folder to this directory on my hard drive. This folder is on a fast drive, so there will be no problem when playing these libraries back from my sequencer. So now we will switch to Cubase, and we will check that everything is in order. So to do this, I will create an instrument track, and here, in the drop-down menu, we can see if Kontakt is available. And as we look down the list, we can see that there are in fact a few different options for Kontakt 5. These are to do with Kontakt being able to access individual outputs. And there will be a chapter covering this later on, but for now we will simply use the standard Kontakt 5 instrument. And by creating the track, we can see that an empty Kontakt player frame has appeared. Here on the right we have our workspace, and on the left we have our library list, where your installed libraries will be visible. As this is newly installed, I have yet to add my libraries. And to add a new library, you simply have to click the Add Library button and navigate to the library you wish to install, and simply select the top folder and choose it using the button on the right. It will ask for your computer password again. Once this has been done, Capriccio appears in our library list. There is still, however, an extra step required to activate the library. When the library was purchased, you would have received a serial number. With the serial number, you will have to go to the library developer's website, so your computer will need to be online. In my case, the computer is online, and I'll simply click the Activate button here in the player. If this is the first product you have purchased from the developer, you will need to make a user account. As I have previously created an account, I can simply insert my email address and my password to log in. Now I have to insert my serial number into the boxes here. You can simply copy the serial number and paste it into the boxes. And then, as long as your serial number is correct, by clicking Activate, your library will be ready for use. Usually, you will be allowed to install, for example, 3 copies of the library with your serial number. In my case, I have this library on a laptop already, but I am still allowed to install it on my desktop. What you're not allowed to do with your serial number is share it with a friend, for example. It's a personal serial number for you to use on your computers. Now that Capriccio is activated, I can go into the instruments list and drag and drop the instrument I want onto the main Windows section. We can see it is loading, and once loaded, it looks like this. One thing worth mentioning is that you can activate your libraries from the Native Instruments website. There should be a link within your library folder, but by going to Native Instruments, you will see in your user account the libraries that you can activate. If there are updates to your libraries, then you will have to download the updates from the Native Instrument website or the developer's website, as these cannot be updated from within your DAW. So in summing up, here are a few of the important points. It's worth checking that your library is compatible with the free Kontakt player when purchasing, unless you have the full version already. Or you can purchase a library that includes its own player and does not need Kontakt, such as a library from VSL or one that uses the Play engine from East West. But of course, there are many other options out there.